You're watching PM Agenda. Time to bring in our panel of political strategists this Monday afternoon. Grahame Morris here with me in Canberra and Bruce Hawker in the Sky News Centre. Thank you both very much for joining us. I want to talk about the polls. I haven't mentioned them yet because, quite frankly, I'm not sure what to make of them. Two today, Newspoll, which shows the government still doing pretty well, closing in on Labor 51 to 49. They trail Labor by, and Bill Shorten recording some of his worst personal ratings. The Ipsos Fairfax poll, however, shows the gap widening once again, the government dropping back to 46-54. Bruce, what are we to believe, either one of them or none of them?
The best of times and the worst of times, just depends which one you want to look at. Look, I think most likely the news poll is more accurate. And the reason I say that is that it's reasonably consistent with the last poll that they had, which wasn't all that very long ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago. And not too much has happened in the last fortnight to suggest that you would see a big drop in the support for the Prime Minister or the government. So that's my gut feeling, that it's much more likely to be in that 49-51 rather than 54-46.
Grahame, do you agree with that?
Well, actually, no. I'd go the other way. You know, when you start talking about changing superannuation rules and everything, I think it's hard to believe the government goes up. But I've looked at this, and why are the polls so volatile over the last, 5, 6, 7 years? In the past, the sample used to be more than 2,000 people. Now it's just over 1,000 people, and you reckon that would double the margin of error. But it shows you, it'd be quite interesting to have both the pollsters on and just see them argue their methodology, because clearly
it's a good idea.
One of them's wrong.
And are they...
one says Labor will just win, and the other says Labor will have a record Australian result.
Are there big differences in the methodology between these two polls?
Well, no, but somewhere in the sampling there must be a glitch somewhere.
And they're asking similar questions.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the superannuation, and yes, there have been a few things over the last couple of weeks. There was an announcement on a task force to tackle ICE and the standard things that governments do. But this debate about superannuation and the pension, you say that's been a negative for the government. But Bruce, would Labor, or would your perspective be that this is perhaps a positive for the government, talking about reining in some of these benefits for the rich?
Well, I would have thought that, depending on how you actually approach it, that it could be a positive for the government if they are prepared to actually bite the bullet on reducing, the access at the very top of the superannuation market to public money, essentially. So that's potentially where it's going. I suspect, though, that argument really hasn't gelled in the public's mind so much at the moment. They may be a bit anxious about it, but I suspect that they really haven't thought too deeply about it. What we are seeing, though, I guess, is an attempt by the government to at least engage in a debate about where we have to go with, the cost of living and benefits and so forth. I don't agree with much of what they're saying, but they're at least having a debate, and they've learnt from the mistakes they made with their first budget.
They're injecting fairness and equity into the argument far more than last year's budget did, and whether we do see any of these superannuation or pension changes in this budget, I would doubt, but it's the start of a conversation. I want to talk about the GST fight that's underway amongst the states, and indeed some within the government as well. I've got a table here which spells out, the reasons behind this argument. It shows you, firstly, on the left-hand side, what each of the states received in the last financial year in terms of their GST returns, and you can see there that New South Wales at the top of the list. WA is the key one here, though, $2.2 billion. What's been proposed under the Commonwealth Grants Commission, the CGC formula, WA would lose $300 million. But if they get what they want, and that is to freeze the carve-up where it currently is, they'd be $467 million better off. And all those other states on the right-hand column there in pink, Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, Tasmania, would lose out. So you can see why those states don't much like what WA is proposing. Puts Joe Hockey in a very awkward position, Grahame, doesn't it? But his signals are they've got to do something to help WA.
Why? You know, one of the problems when you have whinging states running a campaign is people remember what they used to say. You know, for a long time, the rest of the country supported the West. And then the West said, hey, we are now driving the country. We need more money for roads and railways to feed this iron ore monster. And now they're saying, oh, we've fallen in a heap because we spent all that money on roads and iron ore and we haven't got any money, so give us all some money. You know, for a long time, the rest of the country gave some wonderful support to Western Australia because it needed it.
But should any state get only 30 cents back on every dollar they spend on GST?
Oh, yeah, look, David, I've seen the big states argue that, you know, for a long time, that they were giving away money. And look, South Australia, Tasmania, you can't take any more out of them. They're already, you know, a basket case. So it's very hard for Treasurer Hockey, because the minute somebody said, as the Prime Minister did, Western Australia, you make the case and we'll see, all of a sudden Western Australia said, hey, I'll make the case.
And Colin Barnett, I'm not sure if we've got his quote on this today, he's been in Singapore, but here's what he told the Australian newspaper: if the GST is not resolved, Western Australia's future is now with the rest of Australia. It is not with the rest of Australia in a financial or economic sense. Our Boston Tea Party will be shifting our economic focus to Asia at an accelerated rate. Bruce, how do you see this one? What should happen?
Sounds like they're going to secede again. Eh? Look, it's all about vertical fiscal imbalance, isn't it? This is what it's meant to correct. If one state's doing a lot better than others, then it should give some. But there has to be some flexibility here, I would have thought. And if right now, because of the slump in iron ore exports and so forth, Western Australia is in a bit of a hole, then there has to be some correction made to give it some sort of assistance. That's how I would have read it. I mean, that's what we've been doing with Tasmania, the Northern Territory of South Australia, for a long time now, and I would have thought we'd have to do that with Western Australia in this situation. When it gets back on its feet again, then you can correct it again. But what you have to do is show some leadership if you're Joe Hockey or the Prime Minister, and actually come out and do it, not just wash your hands of it like Abbott was on the weekend and trying to make out that this was something the states were going to sort out, as if they're going to fix it up. They're the last people who are going to sort out the problem for Western Australia, because it'll mean that they're disadvantaged. The Commonwealth has to take a stand on it.
Just give me in 10 or 20 seconds, Hillary Clinton, Bruce Hawker, is she going to be hard to beat?
Very hard. She'll be the first female President of the United States. She's very experienced, quite popular, quite a divisive force, but I think she will be the nominee for the Democrats and would be the standout candidate for the presidency.
Call her the front runner.
A very clever start doing it on social media. She has to work out a clever way of divorcing herself from the Obama experiment, which isn't working. And for the lady who came out to Australia as sort of playing the role of sort of Bill Clinton's handbag, this lady has done extraordinarily well, but I still hope she comes second.
Okay. She's no one's handbag.
No, she's no the handbag, that's for sure. I'm sure we'll talk more about the presidential race in the weeks and months to come. There's a long way to go still. Thank you both very much. We'll catch up next week. Quick break, back with more on PM Agenda.